Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool experiment with a huge question at its heart. Can an AI, specifically ChatGPT, actually write a complex scientific paper from scratch? I mean, can it truly think like a scientist? That is a massive question with some pretty huge implications for, well, everything. So, a team of researchers from the University of Edinburgh decided, hey, let's find out. They put ChatGPT to the ultimate test, and trust me, the results, they're pretty stunning. Okay, so how do you even start something like this? Well, to really put the AI through its paces, you need a ton of good data. But, you can't just use real patient info. That's a huge no-no for privacy reasons. So they had to get creative. And by creative, I mean they built an entire virtual clinical trial from the ground up. They've created a simulated data set of, get this, 100,000 fictitious healthcare workers. This gave them this massive, clean, perfect data set to play with. And we're not talking about just a simple list here. No, this virtual population was super detailed. They had varying ages, sex, BMIs, different pre-existing conditions. Some were even given a fictional vaccine. They basically mirrored all the complexities you'd find in a real-world group, making the data rich enough for a serious scientific analysis. All right, so the data's ready to go. The first big hurdle is, does ChatGPT even get it? Can it understand what it's looking at and figure out what to do with it? The researchers decided to just start a conversation with the machine to find out. The lead researcher kicked things off with a pretty straightforward prompt, just laying out the basics. Something like, hey, I've got this data on 100,000 healthcare workers, some are vaccinated, some aren't, and we know who ended up in the hospital. And wow, right out of the gate, the AI's response was really impressive. It didn't just understand the question, it immediately suggested the correct statistical methods for this exact kind of problem. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so it passed the first test, but the researcher decided to up the ante. They threw in more variables, age, sex, other health conditions, basically asking, okay, smarty pants, what do you do now? And this is where things get really interesting. ChatGPT didn't just spit out a more advanced technique. It actually explained why that method was the right one to use, because you have to control for those other variables. It wasn't just matching patterns, it was showing signs of reasoning. It was starting to sound a lot like a real researcher. So, talking the talk is one thing, but can the AI actually walk the walk? I mean, could it actually do the work? That was the next stage of the experiment, turning those suggestions into a real functional analysis. And yeah, it could. It was this amazing back and forth. The researcher asked for the code, the AI wrote a first draft, it had a couple of little mistakes, but the researcher pointed them out, and boom, ChatGPT corrected itself and generated simple, perfect code to get the job done. And the result? The AI's code worked flawlessly. It crunched the numbers on all 100,000 virtual people and found that the fictional vaccine cut the risk of hospitalization by 52%. Exactly the result the researchers had baked into the simulated data in the first place, so spot on. Okay, so the analysis is done, the results are in. Now for the biggest challenge yet. The researcher told the AI, okay, I want you to write this up, draft an abstract for a high-impact journal, something like The Lancet. This is the big leagues. And what it came back with is just wow. It's pretty much perfect. The AI generated this professional, well-structured abstract with all the right scientific language. It had the background, methods, results, conclusion. Honestly, you could put it side by side with one written by a human expert, and you would not be able to tell the difference. So at this point, ChatGPT seems unstoppable, right? It designed the analysis, wrote the code, drafted the abstract. It's aced every test. But then, the researcher stumbled onto a critical, hidden flaw, the kind of flaw that changes everything. See, to make a paper legitimate, you have to cite other research in the field. So the researcher asked a pre-standard question. Hey, I should have done a literature review. Can you find some similar papers and help me make a bibliography? This is bread and butter stuff for any scientist. And of course, the AI was happy to help. It quickly spit out this list of references that looked totally legit. I mean, they sounded completely plausible, citing real authors and famous journals. Everything looked perfect. But there was a huge problem. As the researchers started to look a little closer at this list, they realized something was very, very wrong. These citations weren't just a little bit off. They were something else entirely. It turns out many of the references were just made up, complete fabrications. The AI had hallucinated them. That's the technical term for it. It basically mashed together real scientists' names, real journals, and plausible titles to create these phantom papers that just don't exist. They look real, but they're ghosts. So where does that leave us? What's the final verdict here? Well, this one critical failure, this whole hallucination thing, it completely changes the game for how we think about using AI in science. What this whole experiment really shows is this deep paradox. On one hand, you have an unbelievably powerful assistant. It can suggest study designs, write code, draft professional text. It's amazing. But on the other hand, it's a dangerously unreliable source. It will confidently make stuff up out of thin air. It absolutely requires a human expert watching over its shoulder every single second. And this is where it gets really messy, raising some enormous ethical questions. I mean, think about it. If an AI writes half the paper, does it get listed as an author? Are we about to see a flood of AI-generated, basically recycled science? And the biggest one of all, how do we protect the very idea of scientific truth when our tools can just invent facts? So this experiment really leaves us at a crossroads. AI is clearly going to be a game changer for research. There's no doubt about it. But the question is, will it be a helpful co-pilot or a really dangerous shortcut? The challenge for all of us now is figuring out how to harness all that incredible power without falling for the fiction.